Available now at whitepillbook.com. This episode is brought to you by Patriot Gold.
And there's nothing going on tonight. We could leave the city light. Or maybe just get drunk and stay inside.
Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. We have with us one of my very dearest friends. She's the host of Walk-ins Welcome and Dumpster Fire. It is the lovely, effervescent mom, Bridget Phetasy. You were just in
Hello.
Austin, and I got a chance to see you and hang with some of our friends. You finally got to meet Apollo, Christopher Williamson, in am I wrong?
We were on the plane and we were coming back, and there were these kind of bros in front of us getting off the plane, and I was like, I feel like these guys are friends with Chris.
See, yeah, Chris Williamson, for those who don't know, one of my closest friends. It's actually it's interesting because you know how like there's like a bell curve, right? So by me being friends with you, I have access to like people in recovery or
Right.
maybe like Playboy writers, like they're like your next door neighbor. So like I'm like 2 degrees of separation. Like Chris is quirky and he's very intellectually curious, which is really great. But he's friends with a lot of like white people. And like it's just like his crew is just like, I don't know how to talk to you guys. Like they're very like Whole Foods, like they go to Kuya and get their cold dip, whatever the hell it is.
Cold plunge,
Cold plunge. Thank you.
cold brew, cold plunge.
Yeah, they have the cold brew. They have the cold plunge. They're
a lot
totally
of cold things.
They're totally crushing it with their mentions. Like I'm just like, it's like going to a lesbian bar. It's like, why am I here? Like, this is not my world.
That's interesting. I feel like you being such a trickster kind of inhabit any world you want. You seem to be a little bit able to jump in and out of worlds as the trickster mythology does. So
Yeah, but
when
I
I think of you, I think of someone who can seamlessly pop in and out of existence in any world.
maybe, but this is the world I like I don't want to say least, but certainly close to the least because it reminds me a lot of college. Because I had gone to Bucknell, which was a country club school, and coming from New York, I'd never been around these like upper class white people, and their mindset is quite literally, if something's weird, like it's bad.
Yeah.
And there's like not only is it like a lack of intellectual curiosity, there's like an animosity to intellectual curiosity and a real like disdain for anything unusual. But the thing that really rankles with me about it is these are the kind of people in the 80s would be sneering that you're eating raw fish. And then now they'll tell you that they're a foodie because they read the New York Magazine will tell you where to get the best like sea urchin.
Right. I grew up, I feel like it's one of the things I wrestle with the most is this. I grew up kind of the poor kid around the uber wealthy.
Oh, okay.
And I've always like literal country club kids. And I've always had I have such a disdain for trust fund babies, and they weren't asked to be born that way
Yeah.
I have to remember that, but it's something I've always wrestled with, and I'm always giving trust fund babies shit and saying mean things about them. But it's my own insecurity from growing up around these folks who they just viewed they were so certain of themselves, even at such a young age. And I don't know if that just comes with being raised with money. You just have this sense of self-confidence that I just did not have.
And you think
And
it's a sense of a lack of accountability? Like no one ever tells you no.
yeah, I mean, granted, they were very messed up in other ways,
Yeah.
but they did have this sense of certainty about their opinions and themselves and their place in the world, and they knew they were better than you. Like I knew that. I know that it wasn't a feeling. They really did know that they were better.
But
Not
they were though. Like they are gonna
right.
go to better restaurants than us.
Right.
They're gonna go to better hotels. They're not gonna be ever taking the train.
No.
So they're not crazy.
No. No, they're not flying middle and coach, you
Right.
know? Like that's gonna do something to your self-confidence, never
Yeah.
flying middle and coach.
Because it's based on data. It's like, okay, I'm on
Yeah.
the plane, I get sat first, I leave first, I have bigger seats,
Yeah.
like, I have more expensive
I'm better.
food, I have better clothes, like, it is like, objectively, like, if you had your druthers, you'd switch places with me on the plane, you'd be at the restaurants with me, how am I not better? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
there's a logic to it.
there is. There definitely is, and they also were taught there is a lot of truth to that Rich Dad, Poor Dad book that was written.
I don't you know what? I know the title, I don't know literally anything about it. What's the book about?
So the basic gist is that rich people talk to their kids differently about money than middle class and poor
Okay.
people do. And it's true. These kids were talking about their portfolios and stocks when we were in high school. I knew nothing about that. And certainly didn't and still don't have a portfolio or stocks. And talking about assets. Now, granted, I think they have to have these conversations with their kids earlier because they gotta protect them from those hoes, who are coming for their money. Not just I'm kidding, but still, there is this sense, male or female, that they have to educate their kids about money because people will be approaching them differently because they have
Yeah.
money, and especially old money. They're the richer the kid was, generally, the less you could tell that they were that rich. They were very, like, you knew the kids were billionaires if they were really low key. It was always the newer money kids who were flashier with it.
You know, this is something I've never talked about, but this brings up it's funny when talking to you, it's always like a little bit like low-key therapy. Um, when I was growing up, my dad was working at Merrill Lynch, as a systems analyst. Something I still don't know what it is. I only know because on The Simpsons, there was an episode where they were getting what job they should have as adults, and Martin the nerd is like, systems analyst," and he goes, "Systems analyst," he goes, "Yes!" So, like, I don't something with, like, making sure, like, the computer's updating in time, I don't know what it is, right? And so he was making, I'm sure, decent money, but he was always borrowing money from my grandma and paying it back, right? Just I don't know for what. And I remember asking my sister recently, like, "Can you ask grandma, like, why is he like, where's the money going?" Like, our rent wasn't we had this, like, little two-bedroom in Bensonhurst.
Mhm.
We had a Toyota. Like, where is it? Did he
Was
have a
he
drug
investing
habit?
it?
What?
Was he investing it?
No, he was like, no. So, and she got some kind of double talk answer, and I still don't really know why money was so tight and where it was going if he had a decent job and the expenses weren't high.
Right. Yeah, that's always I remember in my journal recently from when I was a little kid, I was reading about we were house hunting as we always were when I was a child because we were always moving. And wrote in this very childlike writing about how we had to borrow money from my grandmother, and my mom had a nervous breakdown because it was like, "Mom had another nervous breakdown." And just like child writing. And I mean, maybe I don't know what my perception of a nervous breakdown was at 9 years old, but it's just funny that to see that in like a child's writing and to be so clearly they were not hiding anything about the finances. Jaron and I we have our podcast factory settings where we'll just take it's like the verbal equivalent of a writing prompt. We'll just take a topic and then talk about where our like for instance, we did one about finance or money, and we just talked about what was the messages we got about money. What was the first time we were aware of money? What was our first job? And I have so much financial insecurity because we grew up always in that, like, it's not enough, that same sense of borrowing money and not having enough money. And never the sense that we had too much money or we had to hide how much money. Imagine how different of a perception and factory setting that would be if you're raised not only to learn about money, but to hide how much money you have from your friends.
Yeah, like Warhol talked about this, about how like when he's around like the extremely wealthy, which he fetishized a lot, like F. Scott Fitzgerald did, like
Mhm.
they never had like money on them. So he's like, if someone doesn't have money, they're either really, really rich or really, really poor. And he's like Edie Sedgwick, who would like, have limos waiting for her. Like she never had money to pay for like dinner. Like, cause she just, it's just really kind of a weird, and it's funny cause like, why is he borrowing money from grandma? Cause my grandfather was like working as like QA guy at a factory, like whatever. So I don't even know what they made somewhere in Queens. And like he was making, I think, 30 grand a year, 40 grand a year. This is like in the 80s. So it's hardly, he's hardly swimming in it. And why do you need money to like tide you over for a week if you're employed? Like I don't
it could just be a cash flow thing. Maybe they just didn't have great I mean, I'd be curious to know. I know that from what it's always weird, and Jaron and I were talking about this too, being kids of divorce, you hear like probably more than you would hear if your parents were still together about what actually happened, but you also hear two different versions of the same story.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's usually the version that makes that parent look the best. And so we were always in financial insecurity. I've heard the version that it was because my dad was a bad businessman and didn't make enough money. And I've also heard the version that it's because my mom was always spending it, putting them in credit card debt. And as he would try and get ahead, she would put them behind. So somewhere in there is probably the truth. But we grew up with that kind of feeling of lacking. And then I grew up always being like being in Newport, Rhode Island, for instance. People, I'll say, oh, my family's in Newport, but they're like blue collar Newporters, a nurse, a fireman. They're not by any means the people. I always joke I don't use summer as a verb because people will be like, ooh la la, Newport. I'm like, no, we're not. I was waiting on these people. And I had a job as a nanny for one of the kids who went to this country club. And it was these kids who are my age were so cruel to me. I would cry every day. They were so mean, just the meanest kids, because I just wasn't one of them. They grew up going to this like camp together. They grew up going to the same boarding schools. They grew up spending summers. And then I came into this very elite, and I was a worker at their club, and I would just be in tears. And that stuff at such a young age, I always write about this. Like I have to watch out for my kind of populist rage, because me being Little Miss, like both sides, and I'll be like, why is everyone dividing everyone? And in the same breath, I'll be like, and fuck these rich people.
Yeah. Nothing gets my like Emma Goldman left-wing anarchism like spark firing when like wealthy people, especially like wealthy young people, feel comfortable being like mean to people who are like in a staffing position. Now, I don't suffer fools gladly, but even then I'm not going to be mean if someone's like a stupid cashier, right? Even though it drives me absolutely crazy. But the fact that not only that they feel comfortable doing so, but that there's a whole system in place to make sure they're validated and never have consequences for just being just absolutely vile. There's this scene in Amelie where one of my favorite movies where they just talk about like someone's likes and dislikes. And one of the dislikes is when people are like humiliated in front of their kids. And like that whole thing when like just talking down to, and it's just the scary thing is like in an office environment, sometimes it's actually productive. Like sometimes that's how people have been raised, and the only way to get them to modify their behavior is to kind of flash back to being their dad or mom. But I still hate it. And if that happens to me, I lose it. Like I'm not saying I lose control, but I'm like the Soviet like software kicks in, and I'm just like, I'm going to kill your family in a few years from now, and you'll never see it coming.
I feel like I have that little mafia inside my heart that's Irish, the Irish and Italian in me. When somebody like crosses me, there is like, I can almost feel the army awaken in my heart, and it's like, you're dead to me now. You don't know it, but you're going to be dead to me. And there is this just like some kind of operating software that feels, I hear an echo. I don't know if I'm picking it up from you.
No.
It's just this operating software that it feels Irish or Italian.
Folks, some of you might have some very bad habits that people like Dave Smith enjoy doing that I'm not allowed to talk about on this podcast, but you know what I mean. And Fume is a great way to stop those habits. It's made of 100% Canadian maple, and they use cores infused with plant oils to curb cravings. You got peppermint, you got Conquer, which has minty notes to simulate menthol, you know what I mean, and other kind of things. They've launched in Calgary, Canada, and have helped over 50,000 customers stop that life-destroying habit. And they're on a mission to help 1 million people by 2025. If you are one of these people who are using something that they shouldn't on a regular basis, head to breathefume.com/malice10 and use promo code malice10. You get 10% off your order. You're going to save money. It'll be better for your health. And you're not going to have yellow teeth, and not everything's going to be smelling. Quit naturally with Fume and use Malice10 to get 10% off at breathefume.com/malice10. Folks, Michael Malice here, podcaster, author, and yes, underwear model. Sheath is something that I wear every day, and the great thing about Sheath underwear is that they have dual pouch technology for both parts of your anatomy. They also have a girls line. I don't wear that stuff. Dave Smith might. Go to sheathunderwear.com and use promo code Malice. You get 20% off. It's great underwear for when it's cold. It's great underwear for when it's hot. And I wear it every single day because it's the best underwear I've ever owned. The first time they brought into the studio, I was like, what is this? And now I swear by it. And in fact, I model for them. It's got added comfort, added performance, added mobility. And there's something a little subversive about talking to someone while the whole time your underwear is cupping your junk. I'm not going to lie. I do enjoy that aspect of it. So go to sheathunderwear.com, use promo code Malice. You get 20% off your order. Support the underwear that supports you and that supports the show. Let's get back to it. So am I allowed to talk about the LA thing?
One more thing I wanted to say that you reminded me of was that scene in The Aviator when they're like, we don't talk about money here. And he's like, yeah, because you always had it.
Yeah.
That's what it reminds me of, this whole conversation. Like, oh, we don't talk about money. Yeah, because you had it your whole life. You never needed to.
Okay, so you brought up The Aviator, which is about Howard Hughes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that book is based on so Howard Hughes, for people who don't know, is this big businessman. He was also a young aviator at a very young age, became an aviator. And then at the end of his life, he succumbed to like, what would you call it? Like agoraphobia.
Yeah.
So he locked in his room. No one ever saw him for like years. His skin became translucent. His nails got long. He had this whole system of how food had to be delivered to him. Like you have to take one napkin and turn the jar a quarter turn, then use another napkin. It was this whole crazy, because he was like the equivalent of a billionaire.
Mm-hmm.
Like they did this,
mm-hmm.
and then no one saw him for years, right? And rumor got out that this was happening to him. Like he's in this, because he became a Vegas kingpin also.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically called reporters and was like, oh no, everything's fine. Like while his nails are like the side, like 6 inches long. But there's a great line from this book. Hold on, I gotta find it. Where he was watching Roots, the movie Roots.
Mm-hmm.
And he would send letters to his the reason he got on the phone is someone published his autobiography, and it was a complete fraud, and he had to go public to be like, this person made this all up, and he sued the guy, and it was a whole big thing. Let me find this excerpt. What was the book called? It was this like massive Howard Hughes. He was watching The Great White Hope starring James Earl Jones.
Okay? Oh, okay.
And he sends his assistant a memo, a letter. Okay, this is what it goes. I can't even say it has the N-word, whatever. I hate to disturb you this late, but I just saw something on TV that literally and actually physically made me nauseated, and I still am! ! I saw a show on NBC in which the biggest, ugliest colored person you ever saw in your life was literally covered from head to foot with Vaseline, almost a half of an inch thick. It made you sick just to look at this man while he's just covered in his own like disease and like bed sores. Okay, let's talk about something more fun. Can we talk about what we discussed about living?
No self-awareness. About leaving?
Yeah, can we talk about that?
Sure.
So it's official. Can we just say that?
I mean, I don't wanna jinx anything, so that's my only hesitation because I'm in it right now. I'm, like, in the I don't know if you've ever gone through the process of buying a house
Well, I don't mean the
and
buying a house, official that you're moving. So even if this doesn't work, I'm just saying you're
yeah. Yeah,
so
yeah, it's official. Yeah,
so it's official, Bridget and Jaren and that very, very, very cute baby, Matilda, who
and the
is
dog,
and Hope, the
the
smiliest
great
baby
white
I've
hope.
yeah, there you go. Is she covered in Vaseline? A quart half an inch thick? Like half an inch thick? Is that even possible?
I don't think so.
You're
Maybe.
you're moving to Austin. We're going to be not literally neighbors, but live closer together. I am ecstatic. And I want to know your thought process because I get asked this question a lot. What
Yeah.
it was that made you guys choose specifically Austin?
Oh, I was writing about this when I was there. It sounds so cheesy, but it feels to me very much like a place where the American dream is still alive and
Oh,
well.
I love that. Wow.
It
Okay.
just it sounds cheesy, but when I was there and I was able to be there this time for like a week and drive around, I mean, the level of construction is really something else. There it is boomtown for sure. But it feels like there's an energy there of expansion, obviously, literally, but they're just I people smile at you. I mean, Los Angeles isn't known for making eye contact and for its people who are, child friendly in the first place. There are families here, obviously, but I think it really feels so friendly and open, and there is this spirit of freedom, and Texas has its own vibe, I feel, of truly kind of live and let live,
Yeah.
and Austin in particular, it does seem very diverse, like a nice melting pot. I I just really I've been there a number of times now, and I've always loved Austin. Before I went to Austin, the first time I went to Austin was when I was 20. I don't even know if I was 21. I was 20,
Oh, wow.
21.
Okay.
Yeah, I was young, and I was living in LA, and it was in probably 2001. I was working for this website, or not even working, I was just doing transcriptions for them and like an intern. And we last minute decided to drive to South by Southwest because one of the bands that they were friends with and covering on this music website was playing. And this was when South by Southwest was like on 6th Street, and that was
Yeah.
it. And we drove pretty much straight through from LA, left in the middle of the night because we were in our 20s and could do
Yeah.
that, and then showed up like rock stars, went right to the guys who were playing Delirious, had so much fun. And that was my first experience in Austin, and I loved it. And then I went back for Austin City Limits about a decade ago, and I had friends. I've always had friends in the music industry, so friends who were playing, and I was with the guys from TV on the radio, and Stevie Wonder was playing that year, and I'll never forget looking over in Austin, and it was just such a fun weekend, and it was so just the whole spirit of Austin and the music. I like music festivals. It's not for everyone, and I understand that, but I love seeing that many people just gather and be like having a good time. And I look down and all these grown men are just weeping watching Stevie Wonder, and it's one of those memories that's just seared into my brain because I'm crying. And Stevie, I don't know if you've ever seen Stevie Wonder live, but it is like a
No.
religious experience. I've seen him a couple times now, and every time everyone's just weeping all around you during his performance. And then I came back. I came back during the pandemic. We drove here, and I went on Rogan when he first moved here. So he was not in the studio he's in. It was in the red spaceship. And we were able to drive around and see it. And we almost bought a place then.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
it was pre-boom. But it was still getting a little bit crazy. But we were able to see I mean, thank God we didn't buy then because the places we were seeing were just it was like doors that opened into nothing, would just be no stairs outside. These houses were crazy. I can't believe people were buying stuff sight unseen during.
You're selling it to me because as a supervillain, a door to nowhere is the kind of thing I need to have in my home.
It was an old woman who lived there, I guess, before. And so they had a porch, but
Bridget, she's been dead for 40 years.
yeah, it had that vibe. I can't believe people were buying stuff sight unseen, though, because if you were looking at these pictures and then you actually went to the places, it was drastically different from what they were selling online. And you might have been stuck with a neighborhood or something that you just never could get out of. And so then we came back and we were looking again in 2021, and it was too crazy. I was like, I can't move here with this craziness. It feels desperate. Everybody was desperately paying
like you were saying,
$200,000 over, getting in lines. It was crazy. And I'm like, this is not an ideal market for a buyer. This seems horrible. And now we went back again. So I guess this is the third time I've been there since 2020. And the last two times I was with my daughter, and we were able to experience the city as a young family. And there were so many young people around with kids and downtown, and everybody's smiling, and the kids, it's very kid friendly. It's not like they're looking at you like you have a disease if you show up with your child. And it was just I know a lot of people hate it, and they're like, oh, Austin's turning into California, and urban sprawl is, people can have a lot of opinions about that, the urban sprawl. I tend to be more pro urban sprawl, I think. And it just seems like it would be a great place to raise my daughter. Everything changes when you have a kid. Suddenly I'm looking at places in these suburban developments, and I never would have considered in a million years that I would live in a place like that. But suddenly you're like, well, I want her to ride bikes with friends and be safe and be able to just live a safe, fun life like I did.
I'm not a parent, obviously. But to me, the idea of having a kid go through the LA schools,
Oh God, no.
to me
No.
seems like it's just a complete non-starter. And no disrespect to any parents who live in LA, and that's the kind of choice they have to make. But it seems that if they're like, it would be over my dead body. Is my kid going through the school system? They're going to be turned completely unrecognizable, and I can't say I didn't see it coming.
There's so many policies that are just, and that's the thing, we've been trying, people are always like, then leave, and it's just not that simple. We have family here. So as I've written about recently, doing the cost benefit analysis of the great weather and our family versus, not the best weather, and having the ability to, for instance, own a home or have a better life for our daughter has felt like a very challenging math equation. But I always think of Thomas Sowell and him saying there are no solutions, there are trade-offs. And that fundamentally is how I have to view all of these decisions when I'm evaluating them. And there will be trade-offs. On the one hand, I'm going to be closer to my family. My family's on the East Coast. So we're splitting the difference now, which actually, even when I was there, was so exciting to me. It's not a 6-hour flight and an entire day, which basically door to door, it's 12 hours to get from LA to my family. And now it's 3 hours and maybe 1 or 2 on either end. That's a big difference, especially as I have aging aunts and uncles and parents, and something happens and I'm not there for 12 hours, but now it's 6. That's a big deal. And I think too, just being able to see the writing on the wall here, say things do improve. It's tragic what has happened to California, in my opinion. And even just yesterday, I saw another article that something like 700,000 people have left. And it's there's no way we could afford to buy a house in LA without having $250,000 to put down, and without being able to, especially with these interest rates, have a $8,000 to $10,000 a month mortgage, which I'm not working at Google. I mean, I can't. That's just I don't want to
And you
be
never will be
house
with that
poor.
attitude.
I never will be with my dumpster fire videos going after YouTube. I love YouTube. That's my new mantra. YouTube, I love you. YouTube, are you there? Can you hear me? I love you. This is my new sky god, the algorithm in YouTube.
The other thing you're gonna enjoy a lot is how welcoming, like, the people, unlike New York, where everyone has an attitude, myself included,
Mhm.
the Austinites are really happy we're coming here and making a scene. And they're not happy about the Californians per se, but the fact that people with platforms who are boosters of the city are coming here, all the reaction I've had has been so positive, and so welcoming, which I, of course, have
People are
exploited.
happy. Just that alone, they seem
Yeah.
happy. And that was I feel like I keep getting bills. It's like any moment I might have of just hesitation. I feel like the universe is sending me a bill from California being like, how much money is this state gonna have to shake down from
Yeah.
you before you realize that you need to go? I was talking on Rogan about how they shook me down for like city taxes it's a long story. I recently got a $350 gas bill for a month, which is crazy. And I know this is happening all over the country because of this kind of fake energy crisis that they're using to manufacture fear and shake all of the population down. But it's particularly bad in Los Angeles where people I mean, my LA DWP bill was like $800, which is insane. My electric bill, I was like, "What?" I had to sit down when I opened the bill.
Wait, what?
I
$800?
physically somebody on Twitter the other day I was reading because everybody's been getting their gas bills, and they're like, "My soul left my body when I opened my gas
Wait,
bill," and that was me when I got my electric bill. I was like,
800?
$800.
Are you running, like, rock tumblers and Bitcoin mining computers
You
24/7?
would think no, but we have an old house and that we rent here, and it's not central it doesn't have central air or heat, and our daughter's room is because of where it is, it's always freezing cold, so we have to run a little space heater, but apparently those space heaters are, like, running Bitcoin mining because
Oh my
it
god.
was outrageous, but I'm not gonna let her freeze, it's
Of
been cold
course.
here.
Bridget, I know you're thinking of buying a house and you're thinking of long-term investment. So I want to take a second and talk to the viewers about something that's really important and a good way to hedge against inflation, and that's with Patriot Gold. Now, BlackRock has warned to prepare for a recession unlike any other, and history has proven the only way the Fed can fight inflation is with a recession, and everyone's New Year's resolution is to buy gold and silver. Over 80% of retirees are concerned about inflation and very concerned about the stock market. In 2008, the stock market and housing market crashed. Meanwhile, gold went from 800 an ounce to 1,600 an ounce over the next 2.5 years. So big banks and billionaires are agreeing on two things. One, we're heading toward a recession. Food prices are going through the roof. Eggs are a problem. Energy bills are skyrocketing. And investors need to buy gold, which several analysts are predicting will hit all-time highs. It's the only capital that's going to be worth something if you know what hits the fan. What else can you invest in that will hold its value? Patriot Gold Group is introducing their 2023 Recession Protection No Fee for Life IRA. Call the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. You don't want to be that person looking at your 401k, crying. You'll get best-in-class service from Patriots protecting Patriots. Patriot Gold Group has the no fee for life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold or silver, and you may be eligible for no fee for life IRA on qualifying rollovers. All you got to do is call 888-505-9845 to get a free investor guide, and mention my name, Michael Malice, or just go to malicegold.com. It's easy. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold IRA dealer 6 years in a row. So call 888-505-9845 and mention my name, or just go to malicegold.com.
So
I got to tell you a really funny story. So this is my best friend, Steph, who I went to high school with. You know how sometimes we get ideas in our head and we don't realize how they got in there, so we accept they're true, but they're just ideas that got into your head that have no bearing on reality.
yeah.
I had it in my head, this is probably 10 years ago, that a gym membership costs $1,000 a month. Like, I don't know how, and at one point I'm like, you know what, I got to figure this out. And it was like literally like 80.
Like
And I'm like, I was like, wait, what? Like, I didn't know how then I tried to reverse engineer how I had this idea. And I think like maybe like some of these really fancy ones are, but that's not like,
Even the
Harvard Business.
really fancy one, like Equinox is 300.
Okay. Well, I
You
thought it
know,
was
it-
1,000. Like, I can't afford this. So my friend Steph had it even worse, right? She's living in Morningside Heights, which is very north in Manhattan. And like this was her first time like having her own. I'm sorry, Steph. This is her first time having her own place. It's not Steph. It's my other friend David. Yeah. Anyway, like she thought she couldn't. Not only could she not afford an air conditioner, that they always talk about how the AC runs up your bill. Like
Yeah.
she thought that the AC bill would be like $1,000 a month. So she's in New York summer, like sleeping literally with like ice packs around her and taking 4 showers a day. And she did the whole summer that way. And then the next summer, she's like, I can't do this again. I'm getting my AC. First of all, the air conditioner was what, like 200 max.
Yeah.
And then her electric bill went up like $60 a month. And she was just like, okay, I deserve to suffer if I'm this stupid. Because think about it, how is everyone affording these air conditioners? They're in every single home.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
I mean,
if
I
anyone
hear-
else out there has some idea in their head that's like this, please let me know in the comments below. I'm trying to engage with my audience now.
Oh, really? That's
No,
unlike
just
you.
just put the comment. I don't algorithm.
Oh, okay.
YouTube, are you there?
YouTube, we love you, YouTube. We do this all the time. It's an ongoing joke on Dumpster Fire. Is we'll be like, tell Maggie in the comments why you think Marxism is better than like something ridiculous where they have to leave a manifesto. It's just an ongoing joke. Tell Maggie in the comments what you think about.
Do you know, to me, the craziest place is on Instagram when people leave these like 8-paragraph comments. I'm like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? This is not the place for it.
I
It
was
is-
searching for an old article of mine today, and I've been using this new browser that doesn't filter everything like Google does, u.com, and I really like it a lot. And
How do you
but
spell
then
it? Y-O-U?
YOU. Yeah. And I was looking for my hypochondria article, and it popped up something like, we need to talk about how Bridget Phetasy is like Dave Rubin. And it was like a Reddit forum under the Dave Rubin. And I was just laughing because I don't usually see that stuff because of the Google algorithm is. And I was like, I'm not clicking on that. But I feel like Reddit's pretty nuts too.
Do you guys agree that Bridget Phetasy is like Dave Rubin? Please let us know in the comments.
I mean, I feel like it's funny. Like I don't have any problem talking about, money. I feel like this is one of the things that came up with Jaren, where in our culture, it's like, you're supposed to be secretive and kind of hide it. And it's very strange to me how weird I feel like, but I'm like, people will be like, oh, you're complaining about your bill and you're a millionaire. And I'm like, just because I have a blue check or because I've been on Rogan doesn't mean I'm a millionaire. People talk about things that people get in their head that are not correct. I'm like, bro, I'm scraping it out with everybody else. I'm trying to figure this stuff off. I have a very successful uncle who is evaluating my whole situation, and he was like, I'm a little worried. Have you considered shuttering it?
I have a few barnacles, and the dumber ones I like to leave around because they make me look good on Twitter. And I have one who like comments, not every tweet of mine, but very often, that you're just saying this because you're a trust fund kid. And can you even have a trust fund if your family's all alive? Is that a thing? Isn't a trust fund when someone dies?
No, you can have one if I knew it depends on when they kick in. So I know kids whose trust funds started paying them when they were in their 20s, like at 25 while their parents were still alive. It's just a way to protect the money from being taxed.
Sure. I did not think that that's like an first generation immigrant thing, but I leave them up because they're just really convinced that I have a trust fund, because in their heads, it's the opposite of what you're saying. In their heads, they think you're a millionaire, you're on Rogan. With this, it's like, well, there's no way like your books and your podcast and your locals could support you. So the only possibility is like dad, who you haven't talked to in a
independent money.
It's the exact opposite. So if they like you, it's that you're rich. And if they hate you, it's that you're broke and someone's subsidizing your garbage content.
No, they don't. They're not saying it in a nice way, I don't think, when they Yeah, it's like a mean. It's kind of like me talking about rich people. So I appreciate it. I'm like, I understand this sentiment. You
Okay, I
feel
have
like
to
I'm
ask you
rich.
this because you're in recovery, you do a lot of kind of self-reflection, and maybe you don't have a good answer. Why do you think you get hate? Because it's, to me, completely disproportionate to your personality and your content, but you get a fair amount, and I don't get it. You're just, to me, you're like one of the most amiable people I know.
I don't know. People want to hate. People just want to hate. I don't
Hate
understand.
is gonna hate.
Haters gonna hate. It's I don't I get it. I mean, I get it. First of all, on the internet, I think so much of it is drive by, and I've been guilty of that.
Okay,
I
that's
think I
fair.
said to like Kumail once, I called him like a bitch ass for tweeting something, and then I was like, ah, that probably wasn't the
To
nicest thing.
who?
He's the comedian Camille. What's his name? I can't remember his last
Oh,
name.
yeah, okay, I know what you're talking about, yeah.
He was a superhero. He got all ripped, but he had some tweet that was ridiculous, and I was like, "Oh, this is like a." I called him a bitch, but and then I'm like, "Ah, that's probably not my proudest moment." And
Right.
it's usually very in my head, in my tone of like East Coast, like the way I talk to my friends. You're a bitch ass, but online it can look a lot more.
Sure.
That's why I started Dumpster Fire. I literally started Dumpster Fire because I'm like, I don't think people are hearing the tone of my tweets and the way that I mean them, which
That could
is
be it.
a lot of it is performative outrage. So Dumpster Fire is kind of a satirical news show making fun of satirical news shows. But so many of my tweets are in that kind of South Park, like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah,
Like, we are going to be outraged now.
yeah.
And I'm not really outraged, but sometimes I am outraged. But a lot of the times it's just I find it amusing to be outraged. It's kind of funny to be like, "Huh, this is outrageous."
Well, because, like, what else are you supposed to do, right? You're like, there's this nonsense being shoved down people's throats, and we're like, what we were just talking about before we started recording, Harry and Meghan. It's just like, it's such a contrived, like, we have to care about these people for, like, he's not even a prince anymore. So like, why am I caring about some rando? If I want to care about a rando British dude, it's gonna be Chris Williamson and not
Right.
like Prince Harry. Uh, it's just so, and it's just amazing to me, apparently, how many women, and it's got to be almost exclusively women, read People magazine, and just that's the people that they follow. And if People magazine's telling you Harry and Meghan are the shit, then you're gonna be following Harry and Meghan.
There's way more people following that stuff though. I mean, that's it, in the discourse in our space. I laugh at how people get these big ideas of themselves and I'm like, no one fucking knows who you are, buddy. Nobody knows they know Joe now, but even Joe Rogan 5 years ago was not a household name. He became a household name when CNN and the White House started going after him. But before that, my dad hadn't really heard of Joe. He wasn't it was like he was still pretty insulated in a very and it wasn't like he had jumped the mainstream like I feel he has now. And none of the people who have these massive, which is kind of the weird but cool thing about what the time we live in, and I talk about this with one of the Denisha Carter came on, and she's a TikTok influencer, and we were talking about how you'll go to Coachella or something, or you'll be out in somewhere like that, and these young people will be getting mobbed by hundreds of people, and you're like, who is that? I've never seen them, and it's some TikTok celebrity or some YouTube star, and so you can have these huge platforms and no one will have any clue who you are, which is just a very cool time that we are. But when people are like, "Oh, you're famous," I'm like, "No, my mom, your mom doesn't know my name." I think of famous like Brad Pitt and George Clooney and Rihanna, people who generally have a perception of like there's a household name factor to them. And these desperate housewives or whatever, the real housewives are far more famous than most of the people in the like discourse space talking about all the culture war stuff.
Something just happened to me last night, which I wanted to share. It's really funny when people try to come after you and diminish you, and how you'll have a group, and within one day you'll have contradictory ones. So like, I'll be called like conservatives will call me a commie, and then some lefties will call me like a far right, whatever. And just yesterday it was just because you had one hit with this North Korea book and now you feel comfortable being a dick to everyone, other people were like, oh, you're just a Twitter micro celebrity and that's why people know you. And then it's like, you're only known because you're a Joe Rogan orbiter. And it's like, well, it can't be all of them. It can't be that one thing. But it's just because because people have such bad low empathy and they think what their perspective is the universal one, often because they have no self. So from their perspective, they've heard of you, like you on Rogan, like you're the Rogan chick, and they won't know your shows. They won't know you're
I'm
writing
fine
for
with
Playboy.
that.
It's like, yeah, you're just the Rogan girl.
Completely fine. You can call me the Rogan chick. Like, okay.
Do you still get nervous doing it?
You know, it's weird. This time I was so comfortable and I didn't have as bad. The last time I did it, I felt spazzed out because I felt like I hadn't had a real conversation since I had just been new mom.
Yeah.
And I was really only like 6 months postpartum when I did that one. And you don't really realize how you slowly get your brain back. And I was forgetting words. I couldn't remember anything. It was like I was joking that afterwards, and I was mad I didn't make this joke when I was talking to him, but I'm like, I feel like I know what it feels like to be Biden, where you just like run into like a blank space and you're like, where am I? Well, what's going on? Just nothing, your train of thought just ends. It's an empty station. No one's there to pick you up. You
I
want
was
ice
on
cream?
Jimmy Dore recently, and I meant to say Lech Walesa, and I said Václav Havel. One was the head of Poland, one was from Czech Republic or Czechoslovakia, excuse me. And I got the name completely wrong as I'm talking about the white pill, and like he corrected me. And obviously it was kind of a brain fart, but it was still scary. And I'm like, this is bad. Like if I'm sitting home, like this guy wrote a book about the fall of Eastern Europe and he doesn't know the difference between Lech Walesa and Václav Havel. Like he's a total fraud. And it's like, I know the difference. My brain just doesn't work.
Yeah. And so I felt like the last time was I was just, that one felt rough for me. And then this one, I felt really grounded and calm, and it felt like just catching up, and I wasn't nervous. It was really fun. Joe and I think in many ways are very similar. So the conversation, I don't know that we like ever completed an entire thought in the whole episode. It's just like boing, 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 boing. And that's what it's like anyways. But I appreciate him so much. I just appreciate his being able to sit down and catch up. And a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about with him, I think I've gotten used to. What I have gotten used to is me saying things on that podcast or him saying things and then those things going viral and then everyone holding those things against you for all of eternity. And it's just like, whatever. Like I was on the episode when he said that there was going to be a red wave like The Shining. And I kind of thought there would be as well. And so this episode, when we were talking, I was like, what do you do do you evaluate that? Are you like, whatever, when you're wrong about something? We had a conversation because I was like, I was thinking about what did I miss and how did I get that wrong? And he was talking about how he reflected on it. But that clip was like, oh, I bet these two idiots laughing are, waking up today not so sure of themselves.
Well, I'm sorry, that view was basically the conventional wisdom. So it's not like you were making some kind of insane prediction. You were just going by literally all the polling data. So like, how are you idiots if you're just trusting what the media is doing their best to report?
Yeah, that. And I think as we were talking about this past episode, some of it is just who we talk to and our own bias, because I think and he made a good point that Americans, what I really took from it was I underestimated the tolerance that people had for lockdown. So just because, and this is what you were saying, because my worldview, and partially because I was in California where they were extremely harsh, I was thinking everybody would want to make their government pay, not realizing a lot of people think the government did the best they could with the information they were given and they were okay with it. And they have as Joe was saying, people just have short memories. And the most recent thing that they were worried about was Roe v. Wade. And
I disagree. And let's discuss this.
Okay.
I don't think maybe this is a pedantic distinction, but I don't think it is. I don't think it's that they have short memories. I think they live in a perpetual present. So if you have a soap opera, right, and like there was an episode in the 80s, there was Dynasty, and Adam raped Trilby or whatever her name was, and then a few seasons later he was dating her and married, and they just never talked about it again. Like it just kind of stopped happening, and it's just like, wait, what? Right? But in the narrative of the show, if like they don't acknowledge it, like it never happened. And I really feel that for a lot of people in this country, both red and blue, their view of reality is just what's now. And unless the people on their screens are reminding them of what happened before, they are only understanding the perpetual present, and they don't have the critical thinking or just the framework to be like, wait a minute, like, you know, because again, like when Kamala Harris was talking about, I'm not taking the Trump vaccine, and then like, if you don't take this vaccine, you should be fired. You would think that's self-contradictory, but no one even blinks.
That's I do believe too there's something, and I've seen this with the most successful pundits, there is a level of shamelessness that they have that too, where they'll just say something and never reflect on it and be completely wrong because they know that the culture has that same ability to just, like you said, this eternal present. Although I will say I was reading some of the numbers this morning, and single women went like D plus 37.
Wow.
So married women, married men, and almost there was a red wave. The only thing that stopped it was single women going D plus 37. And I do think that a lot of that was Roe v. Wade.
Yes.
So I kind of underestimated the effect that had on young women and didn't really factor it into my own.
I'm surprised you're being this explicit about repealing the 19th Amendment, but I'm glad to hear you say it. Listen, you're a mom now. It's all right. We tried it. It didn't work. Now we're going back. Folks, your welcome is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. And let's face it, sometimes multitasking can be overwhelming, like when your favorite podcast is playing, the person next to you is talking, your car fan is blasting, all while you're trying to find the perfect parking spot. But then again, sometimes multitasking is easy, like quoting with Progressive Insurance. They do the hard work of comparing rates so you can find a great rate that works for you, even if it's not with them. Give their nifty comparison tool a try. You might just find getting the rate and coverage you deserve is easy. All you need to do is visit Progressive's website to get a quote with all the coverages you want, like comprehensive, collision coverage, or personal injury protection. Then you'll see a Progressive direct rate, and their tool will provide options from other companies all lined up and ready to compare, so it's simple to choose the rate and coverages you like. Press play on comparing auto rates, quote at progressive.com to join the over 29 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. Hey folks, did you know that traditional bed sheets can harbor more bacteria than a toilet seat and can lead to acne, allergies, stuffy noses, and it is gross? Miracle Made offers a whole line of self-cleaning, eco-friendly bedding such as sheets, pillowcases, and comforters that prevent 99% of bacteria and requires 3 times less laundry. It's got self-cooling properties for better quality sleep using silver-infused fabrics. Originally developed by NASA, Miracle Made sheets are thermoregulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long. Get better sleep every night. Self-cleaning, they're infused with natural silver, which prevents 99.9% of bacterial growth, leaving them cleaner, fresher, 3 times longer than other sheets. And Miracle sheets are comfortable without the high price tag of other brands. Stop sleeping on bacteria. Clean sheets means less bacteria to clog your pores, fewer breakouts, and other skin problems. Go to trymiracle.com/malice to try it today. We've got a special deal for you. Save over 40% and use our promo code MALICE at checkout to save even more, and you get 3 free towels. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/malice. Use the code MALICE to get your 3-piece towel set for free. Save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/malice to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode. Let's get back to the show.
I feel like that. What do you think about this? There is like a kind of backlash. Obviously, I mean, I wrote that I regret being a slut piece, and it was like went bananas. And I don't know that I consider myself part of this kind of this backlash to the sexual revolution, but there is a kind of trad wife renaissance coming. What do you make of it? Have you paid attention to this at all?
I have. I'll give you my version of it, where I was like, it was like my version of Usual Suspects, when like you realize like the whole time you've been believing a narrative that's not true.
Yeah.
So my all-time like talking head idol was Camille Paglia,
Mhm.
and I discovered her in high school at the exact right time when you're kind of trying to form your identity, and I thought she was the best thing ever. And there was this one, she had a couple of books. I think it was called like Sex, Art, and American Culture or something like that. And there was a transcript of a little movie she made where she went with this drag queen, Glenda Orgasm, around the village, Greenwich Village, and she was yelling at all the feminists because that was when the feminists were extremely anti-pornography. Like people are too young
Yes.
to realize this. This slut walk wasn't a thing. Like they were trying to ban like Playboy, and they just thought
Yeah.
pornography was inherently anti-women. And she goes up to these women and she's like, "Oh, you're disgusting. You should be like in a mental hospital. You're just terrible. Like shameful. Yes, we need more pornography." Like I didn't really know what the hell she was talking about, but I love that she's like getting all feisty and yelling at these feminists. And it's also different reading it in a book as opposed to watching it. So I just watched this little mini video on YouTube in the last few months. They go to like a gay porn store, and she's talking about like, oh, you know, the thing is with all this pornography, you have people who are like barely legal, and she's talking about how great it is. And she like, we need more like Lolita. We need like more of an embrace of like underage sexuality. And I'm watching this and I'm like, no, we don't. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, and it totally, when I'm 16, 17, I don't know how I didn't register it. Watching her say it is very different from just reading it like 2 sentences in a book. But
Right.
I'm like, this crap's been there from this is the mid 90s. And I was completely, and I felt so duped. And now I have to like
Mm.
go back because, you know, I have a good friend who's also a pundit, and she was just talking about like, it drives me crazy that like every social conservative, like slippery slope talking point has been beyond validated.
Right. Yeah. I mean that
Oh, and
was
no,
some.
I'm sorry, I'm not done with my rant,
Oh,
because
go on.
then when you have these libertarians like from Reason Magazine who are saying that all this stuff about going after kids is like a moral panic, and I'm like, I'm sorry, they're explicitly saying they want to teach kids how to kids. I don't mean high schoolers. I mean children, like about sexuality and
Yeah.
and safe sex and all that, and how to do a blowjob. It's just like, no, 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 no,
Yeah.
no, no. Like this, there's no debate here. This is completely disgusting and inappropriate, and you're really setting up some very bad things. This isn't just some academic like let's inform them. So I've been taken for a major loop.
Yeah. I feel like that was one of the things that I was a point I was gonna make about California seeing some of these policies that Scott Wiener in particular, which is like,
Yeah.
how are we not living in a simulation with that name running all of these crazy policies, putting into place that I think we're gonna see the effects of, 10 years from now. But people will make the most dishonest arguments when
Yes.
you're saying, "Hey, we need to stop like the drip of this that's heading into all of our institutions. This is definitely being institutionalized." And people will be like, "Oh no, show me how it's being institutionalized. That's just right-wing moral panic." And I'm
Your
like,
homophobia. Yeah.
you're letting men self-ID into female prisons. That's actually happening. That is something that is institutionalized. There's so many other examples. We basically have like the kidnapping bill in California now, where you can just come to California with your child because now we're a trans, safe haven or whatever. But when you have parents who are divorced and they're in disagreement about what to do with a kid, there used to be this idea that you couldn't do that. You couldn't just skip to another state and be harbored there. And now there's this new law that was passed in California where you can take your kid, and it's messed up. Like that stuff is that's this is and I mean, the stuff in the schools, Abigail Schreier's been reporting on this stuff forever. She wrote that book about irreversible damage, and I feel like everyone's been, riding the wave of that work ever since. And she's so ahead of seeing how this stuff is actually being implemented and institutionally. But when you point it out, people are like, "That's so dishonest. Show me
Uh,
where it's being like
and I got to
it's
tell
in the
you,
curriculum."
if yeah, how is that institutionalized? If I went to jail, I would absolutely identify as a woman, and be housed with them in 2 seconds, because it's going to be so much safer for me. Like I don't.
Yeah, but I mean,
The incentive is all there. What's the downside?
the fact that people can't imagine And again, I talked about this on Rogan, and I love Rob Henderson and his idea of the luxury beliefs. It's very easy to sit in your nice neighborhood and be
Yeah.
like, I am all for trans people IDing into a prison, not having any conception or idea or thought that predators and criminals might take advantage of a system. Like, why would you not think that? If I don't understand, I just don't understand that mentality.
Yeah, the question is, do you want to make it easier for violent rapists to have women trapped in small rooms with them? Because that is,
'Cause that's what you're
and then to say none of these violent rapists are going to be dishonest about their desire for violent rape. All you have to do is fill out a form. It's like, where do you even start to argue with these people?
and it's not gonna for people who supposedly care about the underprivileged, voiceless minorities, women in prison, they are the most voiceless and underprivileged, and you are putting them at a disservice, and it's not gonna affect you. And it's
Right.
I had the Women's Liberation Front women on my podcast, and they said something that's just stuck with me for so long. They said, "We don't look at what allies say they believe, we look at what they're teaching their kids. And when they say sex
Oh,
work is work, they're not telling their daughters to go be a sex worker or a stripper." And
right.
so it was that really stuck out to me, thinking of these like woke West Side moms that I know who are all on board with like sex work is work. And it's like, okay, but are you teaching, mm, you know, whatever your weird named child is to like,
Esophagus.
yeah. Are you teaching Ophelia to go walk the streets? No.
What was the weirdest name that was in contention for Matilda?
It was never any other. We were thinking long before we ever had kids, we were gonna name I liked, Millie, which I thought was really cute, but then my old roommate's dog is named Millie, so that was just off, and then my sister said, "You loved that Roald Dahl," speaking of a topical topic. um, I was obsessed with that book as a kid. I loved it. I loved the movie. I went and saw the play when I was in London. It's just always been. She's like, you know what name I love? Matilda, and it just stuck.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I looked it up, and Jaron was like on board, but he kind of wasn't fully on board. And I looked up what it meant, and it means mighty in battle. And I was like, she just won her first battle. And that's what her
Roald
name
Dahl
is,
is like one of
Matilda.
the worst people who ever lived, right?
I know. I've learned this recently. I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Not the racism stuff, which is also like he's part of my book. He's in the white pill because first of all, he's like, well, Hitler didn't pick on them for no reason. Like that was one of his quotes.
Yeah, he was a big anti-Semite. I
But
didn't
that's
know
like,
this.
even that I don't really have an issue with as a Jewish person. His wife Patricia Neal had a stroke, and not only was he like first of all, he was like he like wouldn't let anyone help her, so she's like crawling around like trying to do things for herself, and he's like, that's how you learn. But there's a scene in her autobiography where he takes her to bed and he basically assaults her, and she can't really do anything about it because she's out of a stroke, and she's just like, it was agony. And it's just like, oh my God. And he's also like 6'5" or 6'6", and she's just laying there like half paralyzed, like
Oh my
basically going
God.
to town on her. It's just awful.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know any of this.
Well, you should read The White Pill. It's a very good book.
I want to read it. I want to. Your books always like make me feel like I'm a dum-dum. Remember the first interview we did where I was like, can you break down this one sentence in the intro of your book? Because it took me like 20 minutes to read and try and figure out, and I still didn't understand it.
Do
You're
you
very
agree
smart.
with me? Do you think that we're as a country, as a society, doing better in 2023 than we were in like 2021?
No,
It's tough, right? I don't
probably.
know.
I mean, it's tough. Well, we were in the middle of a pandemic in 2021, so it's nice to be open again and to be living. But that was weird too. When we were at the hotel, I was like, it's like it never happened. That's
Yeah,
just like it's
right.
very strange. Like, what would have happened if we had just behaved like Sweden? There wouldn't be.
And do you know what else is crazy? There wasn't some like big victory lap. It wasn't like, "Hell yeah, we did it. We beat
We did
COVID. Like, we're
it.
back to normal. Let's have parades." Like, you would think, like, that'd be such a great way to, like, and take credit of the politician to, like, bolster morale. And it was just like, yo, it was just like, it's like, there was this prank I heard once where someone in their dorm, like the other kids in the hall, like bricked up their room and everyone pretended that he never lived there and they didn't know him. And he was just, but like, that's what it's like with COVID. It's like, wait, what? In some places.
Yeah, that's I feel like, I mean, energy is bad, the prices. I don't know how anyone's doing it. Food, just the cost
Yeah.
of living, inflation, all of that stuff has crushed me. So I can't imagine even having more than one kid. And I don't know. That's just, it's been tough, I think, out there. And so in some ways, the culture still seems to be at war. I think you're one of the like you're one of the like we need a divorce or whatever people,
Yes. So I'm
right?
the guy starting it.
Okay. I don't know what that looks like in practice. It seems complicated. That's like above my pay grade, but it does feel to me like people are, I think, burned out on all of it. Like the discourse.
I'm sorry I had to DM because I was talking earlier about I was talking to had an interview today and they
Oh,
just
that's
posted
okay.
stuff. So he just DM'd me and I'm like, yes, please pull it and
Mhm.
repost it. Okay. Whew. I was so glad to see you and Jaren and the baby when you were here. Wait, you never told me what did you like best about Christopher Williamson?
Wait, you never finished talking to me about how you're gonna lead the national divorce because I don't understand how that even happens, like from a
Well, wait.
practical level.
Okay, here it is. Texas is part of Texas's the Republican Party of Texas, now officially part of their platform, is a referendum to have Texas declare its independence from the United States, right? Here's how it happens. We have the referendum, it passes, Texas declares it's part of the United States. There's going to be some brinksmanship, and either it happens peacefully or hopefully it doesn't get aggressive. And I mean, I know I'm like being the underpants nose, like, and I'm yada yadaing the middle part, but at a certain point, it's like a question of
You're
will.
like,
And here's the other thing, because
referendum
yeah,
blank,
but
text it.
here's the other thing is that if Texas does this and it does it seriously, right? Are other states going to do it themselves, or are they going to come out in support? I think, and I think no matter where you stand in the political spectrum, people do appreciate there is this brinksmanship going on between Governor Abbott in Texas, who's hardly some kind of wide-eyed radical, DeSantis, who obviously has presidential ambitions in Florida, and Biden, right? And Biden and his base like get off about like basically giving the finger to the villain DeSantis and Abbott. Abbott and DeSantis, if you're worried about illegal immigrants, like why are you importing them further into the country, right? You would think that would defeat the purpose, but they're
Mm.
sending them to Martha's Vineyard and other places to be cute, and that's ruffling feathers. So at a certain point, it looks like it's just going to keep escalating, and something's going to have to give. And what it looks like, that's a question of the negotiation. One of the big questions people ask is who gets the nukes, and it's like, well, if me and Bridget were married and we got divorced, who gets the house? Well,
Mhm.
that depends on negotiations. There's no like one answer that like the taller person gets the house or the guy
Mhm.
gets the house or the girl gets the house. So I think it would be tricky, but I don't think the trajectory we're on is sustainable long term.
Is my best friend Dave Smith on board with this?
Yes, it's my
Okay,
understanding. I can't speak for him, but
he's like a pro national divorce.
that's my understanding. I'm
Okay.
99% sure. I'm sure people can correct me, but I'm 99% sure.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know enough. I just I'm very much, I think, more in I don't know, it's funny when you have
Listen,
a
listen, my beautiful friend who I love very much. Once you're a Texan, I think things are gonna seem very different for you when you're living here.
well, I think I'm just in it with, like, having a kid. You just
Sure, of course.
put your
Yeah.
head down and you're very much, I believe many people are just trying to live their lives and maybe be entertained occasionally and pay their bills. So I feel very much always out of my element in the pundit space, and I
Well,
feel like I'm the normie that they bring around to be like, "Hey, What are the normals joking
But
about?
I do feel that DC is the impediment to people just living their lives and being entertained once in a while. And I think there's no signs that I can see that the powers that be in Washington are interested in slowing down or reversing that trend. I think all the incentives and the direction from both parties are toward radically increasing DC control over America. The only thing to the contrary that I could see was Roe v. Wade being overturned and going to the states. That was one loss of the federal government's authority in a very specific sense. But other than that, I don't see any. And here's the other thing, which, you know, if a Republican politician right now said, let's go back to Obama's budgets, which was 2016, 7 years ago, he would be looked at as a complete to the right crazy person like he would make Marjorie Taylor Greene look like a mainstream person. So I think the fact that even the two previous presidents' budget is regarded as completely beyond the pale to return to says that the foot is very heavily on the accelerator, if that's how cars work, which I still have not learned how to drive.
I can teach you how to drive.
But you're a girl.
I'm a great driver.
Of course you are.
I drove around America. Yeah. I love driving.
If you know what? That would be fun. If we get a little camera in the car and we have a driving lesson, we can make content that way. People would love it. And I'll tell you what else. But hey, YouTube, when I was in college, my friend Lori Hennigan, Lori, God bless you. If you're still out there, one of the best people I was friends with, she started giving me driving lessons. And we pull up in this, it was like between two rows of houses. And this little kid, maybe 8, pulls up his bike and he looks in the window and he goes, "A woman teaching you how to drive?" I will never forget it. And the thing is, they never found that kid. They just found the skid marks and his little shoes on the floor after I solved that problem. She didn't teach me how to brake, kiddo. Bridget, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this episode?
Oh, the whole episode, I just love catching up with you and talking to you. You're just a joy and a delight. And it's funny, I've been thinking a lot about why why people would hate me. I'm still thinking about that question because I get why people would hate me. Sometimes I hate me. I do. Okay. This is always my therapist's big fear is that I'm just reaffirming the negative voice that we're trying to work against. So I'm like, I get it. I would hate me too sometimes. I do.
You're welcome.
Hey, this is Adam Carolla. Let me tell you about my podcast. We do it every single day, so you can subscribe, and there'll always be a fresh one waiting for you. It's about 2 hours of topical topics, and news, and guests, and comedians, and, of course, my own vitriolic take on just about everything that's going on in the world. Plus, we get a lot of really interesting, notable people who come in. We'll get politicians, we'll get tastemakers, we'll get stand-ups, we'll get authors, we'll get pundits, we'll get, I think about covers it all, celebrities as well. And we'll do some really interesting interviews with them. You can get The Adam Carolla Show wherever you download your podcast.
All month long on Pluto TV, stream the biggest Tyler Perry movies free. Watch your favorites like Medea's Witness Protection and Medea's Big Happy Family. Join Tyler Perry as he goes on a couples retreat with Sharon Leal in Why Did I Get Married? Or Idris Elba and Gabrielle Union in the Tyler Perry directed film Daddy's Little Girls. Plus, Pluto TV has hundreds of channels with thousands more movies and TV shows. Available on live and on demand. Download the free Pluto TV app on all your favorite devices and start streaming now. Pluto TV. Drop in, watch free.